The Sega Genesis, or Mega Drive as it is known in regions outside of the United States, was released on August 14th, 1989 in North America. It was Sega's breakout system as they took on Nintendo head-on in the 1990s. The Genesis had its blast processing, gave the Super Nintendo a run for its money with games like Sonic and an even more bloody version of Mortal Kombat. With it just under 1,000 games released for the system, there's a wide variety to choose from, some of which have become quite hard to find these days. So let's take a look at 10 more rare and expensive Sega Genesis games. Starting out our list is a very different type of game, and it's Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. The game is a beat-em-up platformer where you control Michael Jackson and he tries to save children from the bad guys. And while this may sound absolutely crazy, and by all means it definitely is, the game was actually not that bad. It's actually kind of a hidden gem on the system. And on top of that, the music was actually scored by Michael himself, and it's actually really good. It just plays on his popular songs. Billie Jean and other popular songs make their melodies into this game. It's actually really good. However, the game is pretty expensive as there's a lot of collectors that are looking for it. A loose copy will run about $50, but a complete copy with the manual will run you about $80. Next up is Gunstar Heroes, which is a side-scrolling shooter game that is considered to be one of the best on the system. What really made this game stand out, however, is its two-player co-op mode where you and a friend can team up and unleash a bullet storm on your enemies. Demand for the game is completely skyrocketed, and a complete in-box copy will run you around $90 to $95 these days. Our next game is another co-op based shooter game released in August of 1994. Contra Hardcore was a Genesis exclusive, and it's actually set 5 years after the events of Contra 3, which was released on the Super Nintendo. Again, the amazing gameplay is what makes this game so popular and so sought after by collectors. It's one of the best Contra games ever made, and they will cost you a pretty penny to get a complete copy. Usually goes between $80 to $100. Now, not too many things in the 90s were more popular than the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the first TMNT game that came to the Genesis was a smash hit. Hyperstone Heist was released in 1992 by Konami. The game is heavily based on the second Ninja Turtles arcade game, Turtles in Time, which was also released on the Super Nintendo during the same year. Many consider this to be the best beat-em-up on the Genesis, and it's pretty hard to come by. I mean, it did sell lots of copies, but the demand has risen. It's a game that people don't want to get rid of, and collectors are constantly looking for. So the demand is up, and the supply is low, making it go for around $70 to $90 complete. Up next, we have Mutant League Hockey, which is a very different take on a sports game. It's an arcade-style hockey game that is insanely fun with a kind of cool twist and twerks in it. Weapons and power-ups litter the ice, and players can kill members of the opposing team, and their bodies will actually stay on the ice so you can trip over them. There's all kinds of crazy crap like this in this game. It's absolutely hilarious. And fighting is actually encouraged, and it's actually a little mini-game you play against the opponent, and the loser has to go to the penalty box for longer. There's so many cool things you do in this game. You can bribe the referees to call bad calls. All kinds of hilarious, over-the-top gimmicks like that in this game make this game so unique, so different. They have not remade this game, so it goes for an incredibly pricey amount. It goes for over $125 for a complete in-box copy. Released on June 7th, 1994, Mega Turrican is yet another run-and-gun side-scrolling shooter on the Genesis. It seems to be a very popular genre on this system. The game, however, ran into problems and had to switch publishers to the company Data East after the game had already finished development. Because of this, it didn't sell quite as well as other shooters like Contra Hardcore, making it hard to come by these days. However, the gameplay is sought after as the game is actually really good. This series of games is actually pretty popular as a whole, just this one didn't get a whole lot of love. A complete copy of this will run around $150, but if you're interested in playing this game, it was released on the Wii Virtual Console, so I recommend buying it and playing it there instead of dropping a whole boatload of money on an actual copy. Our next next game was released in February of '94, and Sparkster is one of the best action platforming games on the Genesis, but it was vastly overlooked by most gamers at the time. It is a sequel to the game called Rocket Knight Adventures, which itself is a great game. You should check it out if you guys not got a chance to play that one. It's not quite as expensive as this one, but it's still pretty pricey in the $30 to $40 range. But anyway, the sequel is much harder to find as it was overlooked in favor of more platforming games like the Sonic series at the time. However, today's collectors will pay a pretty penny to get this game, as it goes for around nearly $175 complete. Next up, we have Legend of Wukong, which is a Taiwanese action-adventure RPG game that for the Genesis that was developed by GameTech. Now, it was originally released in 1996, but only in Chinese. It never got an English translation. However, an English translation of the game was done by the North American company Super Fighter Team, and they began taking pre-orders of them back in December of 2008. Making this one of the last commercially produced Genesis games ever. It is only produced, however, in limited quantities, making it very hard to get your hands on. And on top of that, it's actually a really good RPG, and it's got great story elements, making it very sought after. A complete copy will go for around $180 these days. In our runner-up spot is Splatterhouse 2, which is a beat-em-up horror game developed by Namco and released in 1992. Players are able to punch, kick, jump, kick, and slide kick, as well as use several weapons scattered throughout the levels. Each level features a boss at the end, usually a giant monster, and all the Splatterhouse games in the series are super violent and super gory, which is what really set them apart from what Nintendo was doing at the time. You couldn't get that type of gore on the Nintendo at the time. However, all the Splatterhouse games, there's 3 of them in the trilogy, are pretty expensive, but the second one is considered by the fans to be the best of the trilogy, and it goes for nearly $200 for a complete copy. And finally, our number 1 rare and expensive game on the Genesis goes to Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, which is a spin-off of Arrow the Acrobat series, and it came out on the Genesis as well as the Super Nintendo, and both versions are extremely expensive. However, the game is actually a pretty decent platformer, receiving an 8.5 from most critics, but the game was sadly overlooked by many, and it sold extremely poorly, making it very hard to come by these days. A complete in-box copy goes for nearly $250, which is absolutely insanity. So if you see this game for a cheap price, make sure you guys pick it up. Keep your eyes up for any of the games on this list and more other expensive games like that. So there you guys have it, some of the hardest games to find on the Genesis. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this in your sub box. And there are more rare game videos in my rare game video playlist where I've covered all kinds of systems from Nintendo, a Sega, Game Boy, DS, Wii U, all kinds of great stuff over there. So make sure you guys check those videos out as well. Until next time, guys, remember there's always KMAC time somewhere. So take it easy and peace out.